Hello, everyone. This is Heidi with Downtown NorCal Live, and joining me today is the President and CEO of River City Bank, Steve Fleming. Steve, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Heidi. Looking forward to chatting with you.
There are a million questions folks would like to have you answer, but if you could please go through the essence of what is available to small businesses out there. Some are very aware and others, need to be walked through the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, so the big deal right now is the CARES Act, which was passed into law back on March 27th, and it's a $2.2 trillion program to help stimulate the economy. And the program that most small businesses are involved with and benefiting from is the Paycheck Protection Program, which is a $349 billion carve-out of that $2.2 trillion CARES Act. And we refer to it as the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. And this program allows small businesses, being defined for the most part as businesses with 500 or fewer employees. This allows them to borrow money from a bank or a credit union with a full 100% SBA guarantee. And under certain circumstances, those loans can be forgiven in full or in part. So they effectively become grants for the forgiven portion. In any event, there is no interest payment due on those loans for the first 6 months. There's a deferral of interest payments for 6 months. Interest does accrue during that period, but it's not payable for 6 months. And then the principal and interest are repaid over an 18-month schedule. So it's a 2-year loan from door to door. But as I mentioned a moment ago, I would think that the majority of these loans are going to be forgiven, or at least a majority for each borrower.
How do folks access those loans? And secondarily, once they have submitted the application and gone through the process, what should their expectations be in terms of receiving that relief?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The first thing to know is that they shouldn't go to the SBA. The SBA is not set up to process these loans directly. They have a portal which the financial institutions can submit the applications through. So each business who's interested in the program should contact their bank or credit union and make an application through their bank or their credit union, who will submit that application when it's completed through the SBA's portal.
And are there expectations about when folks might begin to see relief?
Yeah, so obviously, the intent from Congress is to get the money out as quickly as possible because folks are really hurting financially right now, and there's an expectation that with the shelter-in-place orders that's not going to change for the foreseeable future. So everybody is inclined and motivated to get the money out as fast as possible. That said, it's a huge burden on the SBA. The law, as I say, was passed a week from Friday, and there was an expectation that the SBA would be accepting the applications from the banks a week later, which really was a huge demand on the SBA. And consider that this program's $349 billion. The SBA typically will provide guarantees for somewhere between $25 and $30 billion a year. So this program just dwarfs normal activity for the SBA. So not surprisingly, there's been some logjam at the SBA. But as of Monday this week, they really got the portal working pretty well, and they've answered maybe not all the questions that the lenders have, but many of them. And they're now taking the applications. They're assigning SBA loan numbers, and the banks, once they've submitted the loans, got the SBA's approval, they can fund the loans, fairly quickly thereafter. And some of that's starting to happen. So it's just, it's a process that's going to take some time for many of the borrowers. They're in a queue, and they're just going to have to be patient at a time when it's really hard for people to be patient.
So some of the reports I've been reading, even as early as this morning, have indicated that lending institutions did have that logjam, and it's really good to hear that that's clearing up. And did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, at least that's been our experience at River City Bank. We were frustrated on Friday because we were geared up, we were ready to go, and couldn't access the portal on Friday. So that was disappointing. But by Monday morning, as promised by the SBA, they had fixed whatever glitch there was, and we've been able to access the portal and submit applications.
That's very good news. Moving to this morning's news, Treasury Secretary has asked for an additional $250 billion to supplement what has already been passed. How does that correlate to what you're experiencing in the branches and the demand out there?
Yeah, so it's really, we're flying blind, Heidi, to a certain extent, being totally candid. In the week between the announcement of the act on March 27th to April 3rd, when the program was supposed to have been launched and accepting applications, there was a sentiment that the $349 billion was going to go really quickly. And it was necessary for borrowers to get their applications in quickly, or they were going to lose out. And of course, that media coverage only added to the anxiety that people were feeling. So far, at least, it hasn't gone quite that way, partly due to the difficulties in accessing the portal that I mentioned a moment ago. And we don't have a great window into exactly how much of the $349 billion has been used. There's not like a scoreboard telling us, at this point X has been used, but at the end of the day, yesterday, I think it was about 50, 60 billion, somewhere in that range. So still quite a bit remaining. And also, as I think you noted, there's an expectation now that Congress is going to pass some additional legislation to possibly increase the size of the program by as much as, say, $250 billion, if that's deemed necessary to ensure that everybody who is eligible to participate actually is able to.
So another area I'm watching with interest is that some people have reported that larger banks are being treated differently in this process. Is that your experience?
No, I haven't seen that. Maybe on Friday when we as a community bank couldn't access the portal, maybe there was some advantage for the larger banks, but I don't think it was material. There was such a small dollar amount that got processed on Friday. I think it was reported at about $8 billion. Well, $8 billion is a lot of money, but in the context of a $349 billion program, it wasn't nearly as much as people thought for the first day. And as I mentioned, we're having no trouble accessing it now. On the other side of the equation, some of the bigger banks, and one in particular, have really struggled with this program because of some restrictions that they're under from the regulators, and as a consequence have told their customers that they're not going to be able to process any more applications. So that's really sent some shockwaves through the systems because their customers, as you would expect, are worried about what they're supposed to do in these circumstances.
So that raises a good question. What can a community bank do that's different than the larger banks to serve people out there, and especially those who might not be currently part of your bank?
Yeah, so one of the real differentiating factors for a community bank like ours is that we tend to know our customers better than the larger banks will. We have fewer of them, and have closer relationships with those customers. So in that sense, it's a little easier to move with some speed in processing the applications. And we haven't been able to push all of the applications through yet, but we've been able to push a good percentage of them, and particularly those with the larger number of employees, where we're getting the most impact, have already gone through our system. So there is some advantage for the smaller banks just by our nature.
So if someone has been frozen out by their large bank, can they turn to River City at this point, or another community bank?
Yeah, that's a tough one because the SBA is advising people to go to their bank, and their bank is the logical place to go. In part because we as financial institutions are all subject to the Bank Secrecy Act, and there's laws and regulations governing that we know our customers, and we have to go through a due diligence process with those customers when we take them on board. And if it's a new customer, it's just a more tedious process for everybody. So it really is easier in the way the system is supposed to work, where they go to their existing banks. But in some cases, that's just not possible. And I think they should be contacting other banks if they have more than one banking relationship. That's easier. Then they should go to the second bank that they have the relationship with. If they have to start from scratch, that's a harder lift. Our priority right now is our existing customers. We have taken very selectively. We've taken some applications from non-customers where they've got a large number of employees, and we think that getting them the dollars quicker is going to be more meaningful. But it's really a bit of a scramble right now.
On the final note I need to make, and I do need to wrap it up, the Kelley Foundation is part of River City Bank, and that's part of your philanthropic efforts. You have a number of grantees out there who are non-governmental organizations, nonprofits. How concerned are you for their survival at this point, and what is the Kelley Foundation doing to address the need?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Heidi, and you're very active in the charitable world, so I know you're keenly aware of what's going on, and we do worry about the financial health of our charitable organizations throughout the Sacramento region. The Kelley Foundation is really committed to stepping up right now and helping wherever possible. In fact, we've got an emergency meeting this Thursday where we're going to talk about making some fairly large grants to a small number of organizations that we've picked out who we think are critically important right now at this time where unemployment is soaring, and there's folks who are worried about, amongst other things, putting food on the table. So we're going to have an emergency meeting on Thursday and expect to make some fairly significant special grants at that time.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. This is Heidi Kellison with Downtown NorCal Live. I've been talking with President and CEO of River City Bank, and I hope to see you all tomorrow. Thank you for joining me, Steve.
Thanks, Heidi.